Hello, everybody. My name is Ken Stewart. I'm the campus pastor for our East Campus, and I get to talk to us a little bit as we enter into our discussions this week around our new sermon series, The Generous Life. This is a focus series for us as a church, and it's an opportunity for all of us to enter into the conversation. So I'm privileged to be able to talk to you today, and I really want to encourage you as you enter into your groups, or even if you're gathering around a cup of coffee, to talk about and to internalize and then to apply the things that we're talking about. So this week, we're talking about opening our eyes. And to kind of lead into it, I want to talk about a parable of Jesus out of Luke chapter 10 that we didn't really talk about in the sermon, but it applies to this concept of generosity. And that is the age-old parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, this reads kind of like a joke. It talks about the priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan that happen to be walking down the road. And they pass this gentleman that has been beat up and left for dead. And of course, the priest and the Levite, they walk on by on the other side of the road. But something causes the Samaritan to cross over racial and cultural boundaries to reach out to this man and to take care of him. And not just to say, hey, how are you doing? But he took time to pour oil and wine over the wounds and to bandage the wounds. And then he took him to an inn and took care of him for a while. And then as he had to go on with the rest of his life, he goes to the innkeeper, gives him money to take care of whatever expenses might be going on, and then promises to come back around and to settle accounts if there are any additional expenses that weren't taken care of by that initial offering. This is a significant investment by the Samaritan in the life of this person that was beat up on the side of the road. And Jesus defines that as being a neighbor. That's what this entire parable is about. It's a story about, from Jesus' perspective, what it means to be a neighbor. Not to be a great person, not to be some standout citizen, but to be a neighbor. And so in the context of this thing we call generosity, I'd like to take a look at the Samaritan and say what enabled that person to be able to be generous to this person along the road, to be a neighbor. This seems like a base expectation for us that Jesus sets out. This is what it means to be a neighbor. I think the obvious one that stands out is that there's some financial investment, right? He pays the innkeeper, promises to come back and settle accounts. So this Samaritan had some financial margin. I think also that there must have been some room in his calendar. I could see the priest and the Levite hurrying along on the other side. I got things to do. I got places to go, people to see. But the Samaritan had space in his calendar to take time out and to address those wounds and to take care of this person, and even to put him on his own donkey, give him a ride, so to speak, and take care of him inside. So there was a time commitment here. Now, obviously, the Samaritan had other places to be too, because he didn't stay with him forever, but there was space in the calendar. I think a third arena that is often overlooked in this conversation, though, has to do with the emotional and physical energy that the Samaritan was able to contribute to this person that was beat up on the side of the road. The compassion and the love. Think about what it took from him as a person to put himself in harm's way, crossing those cultural and racial boundaries, to do something that most people probably wouldn't do in that region. And to care for his wounds, to put himself out there. And so as we get into our discussions tonight, I'd like you to think a little bit about that third area of generosity, the well within ourselves, and how we do in providing margin or space within our own energies so that we can contribute to the lives of others, so that we can be a neighbor. I admit this is challenging, and I want to be careful even with the question, because it would just be rhetorical in our society to say, how are you doing in that? How well are you providing margin in your own physical bodies and your own energies to be able to just give that away and to be a good neighbor? I would say that most of us would probably fail that test because we're tired. We are so spent in so many areas of our lives, including our own physical beings. There's barely any margin there. So let's admit that most of us are probably there. But as we enter into our conversations right now as a group, I'd like to maybe have a little bit of a dream session. What would it look like to have margin in our own physical beings? Dream with us for a little bit. Paint a picture of an ideal world. I realize this is an ideal, but we frame out ideals and we have them in front of us so that we can proceed toward them and at least grow in that area. So let's start by sharing with one another what that ideal might look like. What would it look like at the end of the day to have a wellspring of energy that you could pour into your family? What would it look like at the end of a long week to be able to be coming home and stopping by the grocery store and seeing somebody in need and being able to give them even 5 minutes of your time? And to have enough emotional and spiritual and physical energy to be able to give. So what I'd like you to do is just take some moment in your group and think about that. What might that ideal look like, and how awesome would that be? And just encourage one another with that. So that's how I'd like to dismiss to your groups. Again, I'm looking forward to our continued conversation with the generous life and what that might look like. And I would just challenge you tonight to enjoy the conversation, to be spurred on by that, and to be encouraged as we open our eyes to the generous life. Have a great week.